Tonight, we are going to answer the question that has been plaguing mankind for ages. What's in the basket? I hope you have the time to listen to me whine, because we're talking about basket case. Nice.
Is it just me? Or is it getting crazier out there?
So, my video on you 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks, got pretty heavy. Talking about some really deep stuff and got personal and just really into it. So I thought I would follow that up with something equally introspective and something I could really, really, really relate to, which is, of course, Basket Case having a conjoined twins on my side who I share telepathic thoughts with. Because, who can't relate to that? No, but after last week and all of my thoughts and musings on the show and the books, I wanted to do something that was lighter and fair. And so, of course, I go to this really exploitation, gritty movie from '82 that I just adore. Basket Case is, there's just something about it that really clicks for me. Part of it is the way that it was shot. It was shoestring budget of $35,000, shot on 16 millimeter film. And since they didn't really have much of a budget to stand on, they had to just film it in pieces and parcels over the course of a year, filming over the weekend when people would be available, and just taking to the streets of Manhattan. And it's wonderful. Like, I just love that grittiness to it. And using the landscape of Manhattan, early '80s New York City, it is such a character in and of itself. And you do not see that New York really in a ton of movies. And obviously, especially today, Times Square now is very, very much more sanitized than it was back in the day. And I love that you see that version of New York as it used to be in the early '80s. It's dirty, it's sleazy, there's porn shops. It's just so wonderful to have this be the background of this movie. It has such of its own personality and character, and I adore that. And just Frank Henenlotter is so fun to me as a director, as a creator. I would love to do a movie in that style, and I would love to work with him. He's got has such a sense of humor about things, and what I'm going to just keep saying what I love about this, what I love about this. One of the things I really adore about Basket Case is it was made for the fun and the love of making a movie. They did not expect this to be any kind of game changer or make a lot of money. And it was very much a friends and family affair. Most of the cast and crew were comprised of friends, people that Henenlotter had worked with in the past. In some sequences with Belial, where the latex for the puppet actually shrunk, his daughter, who was, I think, like 8 years old at the time, had to put her hand in because because it could fit. And, just little things like that are just so magical to me about film in general. And there is something about horror films and exploitation films that, they are so gross, like in subject matter, in the terms of the production itself, what you see on screen. But oftentimes it seems like the most fun and creative and just silly behind the scenes work. And I just really, really appreciate that. Now, Basket Case, one of the, again, I just take a shot every time I say one of the things I love. We're getting alcohol poisoning here tonight, folks. But something about the first movie that is just wonderful to me is the use of stop motion animation for the character of Belial. Belial being the conjoined twin brother of Dwayne, who is kept in the basket. He was removed from Dwayne's side, but there are moments where his movement is done but with stop motion, which was animated by Henenlotter himself. And in interviews, Henenlotter's like, no, that was a terrible idea. I hated doing animation. I have no patience for it. I'm the last person who should have been doing that. But there is just something about stop motion that I have always adored. Since I was a kid watching Clash of the Titans and like Jason and the Argonauts, and of course a lot of like the Henry Selick animated films and some Tim Burton things. There's just something about stop motion animation that it feels wrong. Like it is almost inherently kind of there's a creepiness to it a lot of times. Obviously, much more so in a film such as Basket Case as compared to Henry Selick doing Nightmare Before Christmas or Coraline. That's obviously huge scope in technique and talent and time and money. But that just adds to the charm of this movie because it feels so strange and odd. And that's what Basket Case is, strange and odd in every way. It has some of my favorite bad line deliveries. And everyone on this set, it's not exactly the cream of the crop Oscar level acting performances we've got. But that's what makes it so much fun. Terry Susan Smith as Sharon, who is the romantic interest for Dwayne. First of all, she has this very obvious, kind of horrendous wig because her head was shaved because she was in a punk band, which is awesome. But when she first meets Dwayne, she's the receptionist at the veterinarian's office, I believe, and they're just making small talk, and he is saying how he's new to New York and he hasn't had time to see the Statue of Liberty yet. And I don't know what choice she was making, but I'm all for it because she seems very personally offended that he hasn't had time to see the landmarks of New York City yet. And she's like, well, what about Radio City Music Hall or the UN? Have you had time for them? And it's great. And leading into that, she thinks that he's there to repair the typewriter, and she replicates the noise that the broken typewriter is making, and it's just wonderful. One of the actresses in Basket Case, Beverly Bonner, she plays Casey, who is a fellow boarder at the hotel or motel that Dwayne and Belial are staying in. And I'm so happy, for one, that her character is not murdered. She is genuinely so enjoyable. Like, she's fun, she's sassy. And Henenlotter had he wanted to cast her because he had seen her in a stage play that was starring Divine, the iconic drag queen Divine. And she just had such a great time playing this character and such a love for it that even 30 years later, she did like on her own stage play based on the character of Casey. And she would return in Basket Case 3, just a little cameo working at a fast food restaurant. And the name of that restaurant is Mighty Casey's, which is just so lovely. The little cameos that actors make in Henenlotter films is something that is always really fun. I love when directors reuse actors, and it gives it kind of that community theater sort of feel. Amy Sherman Palladino and Daniel Palladino do it a lot in their projects between Gilmore Girls, Bunheads, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. They work with a lot of the same people. They bring people from past projects into other things they're doing. Mike Flanagan, as I've talked about on this channel, he loves doing that as well. And Frank Henenlotter, same thing. In his film Brain Damage, there's a little Dwayne Belial cameo. Well, you don't see Belial, but it's on the subway and you see Dwayne get on and he's got the basket. And characters from Brain Damage make little like kind of background cameos in the Basket Case franchise. And he had cast and worked with a lot of the cast of and crew of Basket Case on a short film called Slash of the Knife, which I need to see. It is done like a 1950s PSA, but it's about the dangers of not getting circumcised. And so yeah, I need to find this. I believe it is, I'm sure it's online somewhere. I know that it is included on like some of the Blu-rays of Basket Case. So I'm going to track that down and watch it sometime because that sounds so much fun. Like watch that and watch like Reefer Madness. It's like do a whole movie night. But you see a lot of burgeoning talent in Basket Case. So Belial's original designer, Kevin Haney, he did some of the film's effect work, but he left to go work on other things where he could be getting paid. So they brought in a young effects designer named John Caglione Jr. So he took over running the molds for Belial, and there's a flashback sequence showing when Belial and Dwayne were still attached, and Dwayne's a teenager, and Belial himself looks much younger. I would say baby Belial, but Basket 3 has actual baby Belial, so I'll save that terminology. But John Caglione Jr. would go on to do effects for much higher profile projects. He won an Oscar for Best Makeup for Dick Tracy, and he created the Joker look for Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, and he got his start on Basket Case. I think that is just absolutely wonderful. And I would be remiss to be talking about Basket Case if I did not talk about the star, Kevin Van Hentenryck. Now, there is something about his performance that I find so earnest, and there's something about him that reminds me a bit of Tom Hulce. If you don't know who Tom Hulce is, he played Mozart in the film Amadeus. He he was the one brother of Steve Martin in Parenthood. He was also, he was in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I think probably most people would know him as the voice of Quasimodo in Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame. But there's something about Henton Rick that reminds me of him. Like there's like just his voice itself, kind of his look. He has he's got these big blue eyes, and he's kind of like, he is goofily adorable. And he just plays Dwayne with, just a earnestness veering into like psychopathy. It's really fun. And again, he has some unique line reading choices throughout the entire franchise. And that's just a hallmark of all of these movies, of Henenlotter projects. And I adore it. And it's funny, Diana Brown, who plays Dr. Judith Cutter, she plays one of the doctors that Dwayne and Belial's father brings in to separate them when they're younger. And the whole plot begins with Dwayne and taking Belial to all of these doctors and subsequently murdering them for separating them and for basically trying to throw Belial away. Like, they literally do throw him in a garbage bag until he is saved by their aunt. And it's, a bit of a revenge plot. But she doesn't, Diana Brown, she does not have any other credits aside from Slash of the Knife, where she plays a very similar kind of character. But, if Kevin Van Hentenryck is like I know this is going to sound maybe cruel, but if he's the like Dollar Tree version of Tom Hulse, she's kind of the Dollar Tree version of Sigourney Weaver. There's something about her, just her look, that is very Bobo Sigourney Weaver to me. But this movie is just, it's so gross and so much fun. And I adore Belial. He's so creepy, and he kind of, not to bring this back to the series / books, but he's a little bit like Joe Goldberg. He steals panties and keeps them in a box or a basket. He creeps on the ladies. But it's somehow both more and less creepy when it's Belial. His screams are my favorite thing. Actually, a few years ago, I think it was 2020, but on my birthday, I decided to spend my birthday by watching Basket Case and drinking champagne out of a plastic champagne flute, because I'm classy like that. And did I do a little video snippet of that? Yes. Yes, I did. And maybe we'll show it here if the video file works for Dino, for future Dino when he's editing this. But yeah, that Basket Case is such a fun movie to watch. You got you have some friends over, or you're watching it with your significant other, and you just want to have some drinks and laugh at the silliness and kind of marvel at the gritty 1982 New York, and just have a ball with just terrible line reading and some really bad ADR and dubbing. It's amazing. And some really fun effects. The puppetry for Belial is, for it having a shoestring budget, it is pretty impressive. And, they used various techniques. Like sometimes it was more of a hand puppet, then they had more of an animatronic, and then the stop motion. It's a little marvel, my little marvelous Belial, who I love so much. And yeah, really fun kills. A lot of the kills in Basket Case, don't really know exactly how these people die, because it looks like Belial is just kind of rubbing their faces, and then all of a sudden there's just blood and deep scratches, and yeah, he just kind of hands people to death a few times. But some of the more creative and effects heavy kills include one of the doctors. I think it's Dr. I forget if it's Needleman or Lifflander, which Dr. Needleman and Dr. Cutter, those are great evil doctor names. But one of the male doctors has a really fun death. I think he is slashed in half, and then Dr. Judith Cutter, Belial shoves her face into a drawer of medical blades and utensils, and they just do this shot where she has the little knives and scalpels just stuck all over her face, and she does this long scream, and the scream continues even after Dwayne and Belial, he's in the basket, are out in the hallway running away. It's so much fun, and she's just hamming it up for the camera. When they show the death of Dwayne and Belial's father after the boys are separated and it's time to kill daddy, it's mostly, you don't really see it, but he gets bifurcated down the middle, which I always appreciate that, because you don't see a vertical bifurcation a lot, and always appreciate when that happens. I hope it happens to me one day. No, I actually don't. Or yes, my non-script written by Frank Henenlotter. But yes, Basket Case, I definitely recommend it. I actually bought it on Amazon Prime a few years ago when I wanted to watch it on my birthday. And yeah, it's so much fun to revisit and just to appreciate my best Belial boy. Now, there were sequels to Basket Case 2 and Basket Case 3, The Progeny, which I may have just picked up at the exchange for $10 the other day. But it's kind of interesting what Frank Henenlotter does with the sequels. And it reminds me a bit of what Tobe Hooper does with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. And so he leans into the comedy aspect of Basket Case. And I do appreciate the movies. There is a lot of fun to be had, but it lacks that earnest, gritty quality that Basket Case has. And it's not set in New York City. It's mostly set in a mansion, and the budget was expanded very, very much. It went from $35,000 to $1.5 million. So the effects on Belial and all the unique individuals living at the mansion are really fun and impressive. But I do miss the original Belial. But, gotta give credit to what they were able to do with more money and more resources. But the best thing about Basket Case 2 and 3 is Annie Ross as Granny Ruth. Annie Ross, I wish I wish I could have met her and just like had a night out just drinking cocktails with her. Cuz man, she had a life. She was a pretty famous jazz singer throughout the 50s and 60s. She had an affair with Lenny Bruce. And if you go way back into the archives of this channel, when Dino and I talked about the Wicker Man, she actually provided the dubbed voice for Britt Eklund in The Wicker Man, and she sang the song and like did all the lines, which I think is so much fun. But she is just having such a fun time with this role. It's explained in Basket Case 2 that she had a son born with 11 arms. And then after that, she became sort of almost, I don't know why I want to say fairy godmother, but just a protector of unique individuals. And hoo boy, are these individuals unique? There's a frog guy. There's one guy that has these crazy giant teeth. There's one girl whose name is Aleece, and she's got something giant going on with her head. There's one dude that's got a bunch of noses. There's a gargoyle-y person. Now, when creating these characters, Henenlotter went full on cartoonish. He did not want them to look like people with any kind of disabilities or physical abnormalities. He didn't want to portray that and have anything negative. So he just went, he just dialed it up to 11, and you have these just outlandish, cartoonish people. Like, I don't know.
Gooey, doughy Cenobites.
Yeah, yes, gooey, doughy Cenobites. Basically, yes, thank you. Gooey, doughy Cenobites. Say that 10 times fast. But they bring a lot of fun and a charm of their own to the movies. And Belial gets himself a girlfriend. Her name is Eve. And the less said about that, the better. But now I mentioned it, so now I have to talk about it. All about Eve. So she is very similar to Belial. She's just this little lumpy, half-formed or quarter-formed person thing. But she and Belial fall in love, and they have a real face on her. Like, there is an actual, some actor or some actress and, an actual face in the little body. And she and Belial consummate their relationship. I don't know how any of this works, but they do. And then in Basket Case 3, The Progeny, in case you couldn't tell, she's pregnant. And she gives birth to 12 bouncing baby Belials. And much like their dad, they're very teeny and they are grotesque, but also I love them, and they're grossly, grotesquely kind of adorable. I think just because they're small. But Basket Case 3 has some fun gems. It introduces a character named Opal who is at first she seems like she's going to be like the next love interest for Dwayne. She's the daughter of the sheriff, but she's got like a dominatrix kind of fetish, and so she starts, she starts to get down to it with Dwayne, and like she has a whip and everything, um and her father, the sheriff, catches her and is just pissed, and he's like, I told you not to do this again. And then she just, walks away like, oh, Dad. And she's wearing like, assless stockings. And he's just like, oh, next time I'll take you over my knee and give you a spanking. I'm like, no, don't do that. She's gonna like that. Oh boy. She probably calls him Daddy. Anyway. Good night, folks. But anyway, there is this exchange, and I had to print it out so I could attempt to say it with some really amazing alliteration. So there is a like $1 million reward for Belial. And two of the policemen in Basket Case 3, they go to try to get him, and they see that there is a bassinet of baby Belial's. So they go to kidnap them, and Eve is there, and she's still pretty drowsy from a very intense birth, and it's actually it genuinely makes me a bit sad, but they shoot and kill her, and they steal the babies. And Belial and all of the unique individuals are very, very sad. But the cops bring the babies into the... I forgot. I just forgot the word. I'm like, the police house. What? They bring them to the police house. And so sheriff, and they show the sheriff the babies, and he has an amazing line. You boys have been through a lot tonight. Bailey, you book the Bradley boy. Baxter, take the bassinet of baby Belial's in back and get Brody to come by. Where's Brennan and Banner? Bowling. I love it. There are fun little things like that sprinkled throughout Basket Case 2 and 3. Because, these movies lean way hard into the comedy. And there's a sequence in Basket Case 3 where they are all on a school bus. And Annie Ross, as Granny Ruth, just starts leading them in a song. They sing a song called Personality. And it's... even Frank Henenlotter's like, sure, why the hell not? This movie's ridiculous. Sure, let's put a musical number in there. But it's Annie Ross singing, so fine by me. And I'm almost always good with a random musical number thrown in there. And, I say this immediately after doing this video. I have to run to rehearsal for a musical. So yeah, that's kind of my jam. And also going back to Wicker Man a little bit, it's amusing to me because Wicker Man is such a stealth musical of a movie. And of course I'm talking about not the Nicolas Cage remake Wicker Man. We don't need to talk about that. But The Wicker Man has a lot of musical numbers, including one sung by Annie Ross. So I just think it's very fun that in Basket Case 3, they just get to have another musical number for her thrown in there. And then all of the unique individuals join in. It's random as hell, and I love it. But I don't really have as much to say about Basket Cases 2 and 3. I do think they are definitely worth a watch. They're a lot of fun, especially 2. 3, despite it having the baby Belials, and they Belial gets a mecha suit. It it reminds me a bit of what Ripley goes into in Aliens, the whole get away from her, you bitch. But it's Belial just operating this homemade mecha suit. It's so fun. But, the effects are obviously a lot better. They do a lot more. They have an actual animatronics for Belial, but you can see with an increased budget, there is also an increase of studio involvement. And what makes the original so unique and fun is that it was just a labor of love, and they just got to do pretty much whatever they could do, whatever they wanted, which included a dream sequence of Kevin Van Hentenryck running completely naked down the street, and they had to film that 4 a.m. and okay, there are cars coming. All right, Kevin, go. We swept off the street for you a little bit so you don't step on a needle in your bare feet. But good for him. Respect that. But in Basket Case 2 and 3, they wanted to cut back on a lot of the gore, and even for 3, the studio was trying to get it to be PG-13, which a PG-13 Henlotter film, are you freaking kidding me? No. It's just not going to work. But so a lot of things in that sense are dialed back, and it's brighter, it's cleaner, and I don't like that for Basket Case. The original will always be the best of the 3, and it's gained such a cult following for a reason, as have the sequels. And yeah, definitely I would recommend watching them. And even if for Annie Ross alone, if you want to fast forward through the Belial and Eve, maybe you should. It's not fun. It's not fun to watch. It's not charming. But
The end of part 1.
yes. Oh boy. But if I highly recommend watching the original Basket Case. If you're going to watch any of these, definitely that one. And like I said, it developed a big cult following that has lasted till this day. And the timing that the movie came out was very fortuitous, because this, in the early 80s, that was when there was kind of the big home video cassette boom. So it was able to gain a lot of traction and fans just from people finding it on VHS. And wow, is that an old sounding sentence now in the year of our Lord 2023. But I think it all, the movies that have a, cult following are some of my favorites, and some that I have the most fun with and get the most, just enjoyment out of, and just the fun that the actors and the crew had, and the weirdness of it all, and, them just not having to work around so many things just to make this weird, creepy little movie. It's so charming, and I adore it. And even though he's a creepy, creepy little mound of nothing. I don't know how he procreated. I don't try to understand it. I try not to think about it too much, but I adore my little baby Belial and all of his little bouncing baby Belial boys and girls. I don't know. But thank you for giving me for having the time to listen to me whine. Get it? 'Cause the song's called Basket Case, you guys. And that is where I will end it before I start quoting things more, and before you guys, I don't know, just before I really start going on and on how I just want to kind of hang out with Belial, because he's just cool. I don't have a thing for him. I just find him amusing. All right. On that note, I gotta go do singing and stuff with a bunch of unique individuals. So I will bid you adieu. Have a fantastic evening. Thank you for being here. And as always, stay spooky.